All right, now we're going to look at the point of origins and insertion. All right. So before we get started, let's look at what two systems are relative. So when we look at the point of origin and insertion, these are the regions where the skeletal system connects with the muscular system. Okay? So how does bone connect to muscle? What is that structure called? Tendon, exactly, right? So the tendons play a big role in connecting muscle to bone, okay? And each location where the tendon binds is what we term either the point of origin or the point of insertion. So let's briefly talk about what they are, and I'll give you a couple examples. So the origin, the point of origin, and the point of insertion. So you remember those landmarks or the bone marks that you have had such a great time memorizing. Now, this comes back. If you forgot, that's a problem, right? Retention. Learn as much as you can, no problem. Okay, anyway. So when we look at the difference between point of origin and point of insertion, these tendons, for example, for the bicep tendon, that wants to connect the bone to the muscle, there are two specific regions that a tendons bind. One is the origin, one is the insertion. The origin region is the region where the bone stays intact, as in when the muscle contraction takes place or relaxation, that bone is immobile. So let's write that here, just for the sake of understanding. So immobile. Okay, so does not move. Vice versa, the region where there's a point of insertion, this region, there is a sense of mobility of the bone. And I'll give you an example here. Very straightforward. Look at the bicep muscle. When I contract it, I relax it, what's moving? And what is not moving? And that's really important to understand. What is not moving, the bone that is not moving, is exactly where the point of origin is, right? And vice versa, the bones that are moving is where we call the insertion. So if I were to ask you, where's the point of origin of the bicep muscle? Well, you'd think, okay, if I move the bicep muscle, I contract it, relax it, contract it, relax it. Where do you see it? Where you see the immobile bone? It's the humerus. So the point of origin is located on somewhere, some kind of landmark, specifically on the proximal end of the humerus. You'll have a point of origin, okay? So specifically here, if you want to go into really good detail, it's called the coracoid process. So the coracoid process, where it has a bicep tendon that is bound, and you have your point of origin. Insertion is where there is a mobile bone. Where is the mobile bone taking place? It's either your radius or your ulna here, right? So the point of origin is possibly, already we found out, is on the humerus. The point of insertion is on the proximal end of either the radius or the ulna. Okay? And so when we look at the bicep muscle specifically, it is the radial turbuckle where you find the point of insertion for the bone. Okay? And so this is an example of point of origin, point of insertion. And again, later on, you're going to need to know of every single muscle the actual action. So if I were to say the OIAs, this is referring to the action, the origin, where the tendon attaches. So the origin and the insertion is where the tendons attach, the immobile region and the mobile region. And then finally, what does that muscle specifically do? Okay, so for example, here in the bicep, right, you have flexion of in your arm, right? So that's an example, but again, we'll go into more detail on it later on.